Welcome to Country Fried Rock, where we talk with musicians to find out what inspires their creativity. Country Fried Rock, music uncovered. I'm your host, Sloan Spencer. Thanks to the Defibulators for giving special permission to include 3 of their songs in the Special Edition podcast. Please thank them by buying their record, Dead'll Get 'em. We've got it linked for you, countryfriedrock.org. That's the Defibulators from Dead'll Get 'em with Holy Roller. Never miss a radio show from Country Fried Rock. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Just search Country Fried Rock.
Hey, this is Bug Jennings of the Defibulators on Country Fried Rock.
My guest today on Country Fried Rock is Bug Jennings of the Defibulators. Welcome.
Hey, howdy.
I've seen you, actually, the band, a couple of times, starting a few years ago in Nashville, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I think y'all drove an ambulance or something?
We did for a while. We drove a 1977 Dodge ambulance that we bought on eBay, kind of on a dare that went out of control. It went too far, and it became a reality for a while. We needed a tour vehicle. We hadn't really started touring outside New York City, looking for a van that we could drive, from borough to borough, short distances. So a vintage ambulance seemed like the most practical thing to get in our minds. So we went on eBay, and I was on there for about a week when I found this beautiful 77 Tradesman with 30,000 original miles. It was in mint condition.
Wow.
Only thing is that it was in Effingham, Illinois. And so Brew and I took a flight. We took a flight to Chicago, drove down to Effingham, picked this thing up, and drove it back to New York, and we had it for years. We took it as far as Toronto, and then I think Nashville was the farthest we took it south. But, we had to jam all our instruments in there along with 7 guys sometimes, so it was not practical. We'd have to take another car sometimes just to fit everything and everybody. But, it was fun to roll up in an ambulance, and it had a very Ghostbusters meets Blues Brothers sort of thing, which is kind of what we were going for, When we started the band, we thought, I don't care what we sound like, let's do Ghostbusters meets Blues Brothers. And, it was fun. There's actually, that year you saw us in Nashville, we pulled up in front of the Station Inn to see some of our friends play, and accidentally dropped a car key to the ambulance, a spare key, in the grate outside the Station Inn.
You're traveling and touring quite a bit more since then, so you had to upgrade, I guess, on the vehicle as well.
Yeah. Once it broke down on the way to Bristol one year, the Rhythm and Roots Festival broke down the night before. We almost didn't make it to Bristol. So after that, we thought we might get a more reliable vehicle. One time on the way to Toronto, it broke down, and we didn't really know what to do. I think the engine was flooded, basically. But we let it sit there for a while, and before we started it back up, or attempted to start it up, we all gathered around the hood and put our hands on the hood and sang a verse of our theme song, Defibulator, while I was in the driver's seat, and I cranked it at the height of, the chorus, and it started right up, and it was everybody had a big cheer. It was a cathartic moment. We can't do this every night.
So how'd the band get together then?
I was working at a barbecue restaurant in Manhattan, which is what a Texas transplant does once he gets to New York City. He finds the nearest barbecue restaurant and applies for a job. So that's where I met Chris, our guitarist. He found out I was from Texas, and that was exciting to him because he was really into country music and rockabilly and classic country western swing. And, of course, he tries to talk to me about all these great historic bands that I don't know anything about at the time. I grew up in Texas listening to rock and punk and, grunge and oldies and anything but country,
Right.
And that's kind of the weird thing that I didn't expect. There's no way I would have expected to be playing in a country band. Once I left Fort Worth to move to New York City, that was not in my prediction of my life, is that I would end up in a country band.
There's kind of a recurring theme for us of people from the South who move away and then kind of rediscover parts of being from the South that they probably never would have had they stayed.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened to me. Country music culture is all around me. I grew up, a couple miles from the Stockyards, Cowtown, and, Billy Bob's, and the birthplace of George Jones and Buck Owens, and you name it, and, Townes Van Zandt. I was aware of those guys. I was more aware of the Texas songwriters like Townes and Guy Clark and Rhett Miller from Old Lang. And blues was big in Texas. And so I kind of was aware of that. But the word country was kind of a bad word to me growing up as a kid. I was rebellious to a point, and I wanted to listen to punk and rock and everything that wasn't Texas, And there wasn't really a great hardcore punk scene in Texas, so we kind of had a watered-down version of it. We'd get touring acts, but I was really into, geek punk like the Descendants and all, and, and Black Flag and Misfits and stuff like that. So the country, there's a cliche when people say, yeah, I like all kinds of music except for country and hip-hop. And that's because, that was me at one point, because I didn't know the difference between good country and bad country, because on the radio, pop radio in Texas is saturated with Nashville pop,
Right.
And at the time when I was growing up, it was the 80s, so back then it was Randy Travis, Clint Black, Garth Brooks, which today are total traditionalists compared to what's coming out of Nashville today. Yeah, I think part of it was the production, it sounded slick and clean, and it kind of represented something to me that I couldn't relate to, We lived kind of in the suburbs, and we moved around a lot. I had a single mom, so I didn't grow up in the country. We'd move from apartment to apartment, but my dad lived out in the boonies. He lived out in Mesquite, and he would listen and hang out in the garage all day drinking Bud Light and listening to Cajun music and mariachi music on cassette tape.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, this is bad. My dad is so out of touch. He has no idea what's going on musically. Later on, of course, I realized he was, listening to great music. But I didn't really have anybody to guide me musically when I was growing up, so I just kind of listened to rock and Nirvana and Violent Femmes and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, the country is a bad word. That was me because I didn't know about good classic country. And it wasn't really on the radio in Texas in the 80s and 90s. You had to dig for it. And once I got to New York, that's when I started digging. And that's when I started listening to George Jones and Buck Owens and the Maddox Brothers and Louvin Brothers, and it just it was a huge revelation for me, and I started putting the pieces together of, where I grew up and, where this music came from and its place in history, and its place as important musical style that's well worthy of respect and revisiting, So I think part of what I didn't dig about pop country at the time was it's just sort of lowest common denominator pandering, of the cliche of I lost my truck, I lost my car, I lost my dog. That became a time when country music stopped getting complex, It was just let's party, let's drink, or my heart's broken, but that's about it. What happens in Mexico stays in Mexico. I'll put a boot in your I don't know. But you listen to these old country songs and classic country and stuff like Roger Miller is huge. Still so excited to listen to Roger Miller because he's absurd, and he's a lyricist, and a lot of his stuff is very complex, even though it doesn't seem it at first. Stuff like Dang Me, you heard.
That's a great song.
Yeah, and then when I heard it reinterpreted by Jim Lauderdale and Buddy Miller a few years ago, that was mind-blowing. I thought, wow, this song is way heavier than Roger Miller first led us to believe, It's about self-pity, It's about feeling so low, You want to die, really. But he disguises it with humor, and with clever lyrics. And so when I heard country music like that, I was just really turned on, really excited by it, and I really wanted to reinvent it for myself, I wanted to prove to just wanted to play it and play around with it. And it's so fun, and it can be so, complex.
When you and Chris first met and started hanging out, did it start early as a band?
Yeah, we talked about music a lot, and he shared a lot of music with me. And we had some friends in a punk band they had a gig at the end of the week, and they asked us to throw a band together to open for them, like a half-hour set. So we had a week to get the band together. We had a week to name it, which is why we're called Defibulators. I think if we had more time, we might have settled on a different name, but that's what it is. It's what we stuck with. So we got some rockabilly covers together. We did some Johnny Horton, I'm Coming Home, which is one of the first songs we ever covered, which is a great recording, awesome song. Wanda Jackson, Rose Maddox, Aaron sang Wild Young Men. We did some Misfits cover, I can't remember which one. Some of those Misfits melodies make really great country songs. I mean, he was great melodies in Misfits. We did a Black Flag TV Party, the kind of country version of TV Party, and put our own favorite TV shows in there. I can't remember. Oh, Don't Tell Daddy Any More Whiskey, which is one of the first country songs Aaron covered. And when she sang that, I knew she could sing country, because she hadn't really sang country before. She was coming from a folk background, from folk rock, standard, folk classic. She's from L.A., and she has an immense knowledge of hip-hop music, if you ever talk to her, too.
Oh, that's interesting.
Del the Funky Homo Sapiens, one of the best lyricists that have ever lived the planet. So, anyway, once I heard her sing Don't Tell Daddy Any More Whiskey, which is like a Molly O'Day recording with a baby screaming in the background.
Oh, wow.
That's a good one to dig up. She can tear your heartstrings when she sings ballads. So that's when I knew, this is fun, we should keep doing this. We just kept doing it. And Chris says, man, sometimes I look at where we are, I think back to that first gig, and I think, man, we're still doing this. Not like, man, look how far we've come. Look at these great places we're playing. But, dude, we're still doing this. It's just mind-blowing. Don't ask why. Just be baffled by it.
And when I saw y'all, there was some parking lot hanging at the Mercy Lounge.
Parking lot hanging outside the ambulance with Dave Gonzalez. Yeah, those are me and Aaron, probably Chris. Dave Gonzalez from Hacienda Brothers, one of Chris's big heroes. Chris, our guitarist, was really, freaking out. He was hanging out with Dave Gonzalez, and he was looking under the hood of our ambulance. Yeah, Dave was checking out the engine of the ambulance. Kakalaki, speaking of great words, have we spoken about great words? That's one of the greatest slang words in the English vernacular, I think. New York, there's a lot of Southern transplants, and we have a lot of friends from South Carolina. And one of our friends, Bobby, a hilarious dude from North Carolina, and he always refers to it as Kakalaki. That was the first time I'd heard it, and so that song started out as kind of like just a nod to him, just sort of a character picture of this guy, this hilarious Southerner with a lot of ego and a lot of, chutzpah, to use a New York term.
That is a New York term.
Who just, Southerner moves to New York to just take it by storm,
Right.
He's very charismatic and, And then it kind of slowly we snuck this other through line in that he was a musician and he was gonna break into the roots scene. As the roots scene becomes so mainstream, he's like got these big ideas that he's gonna bring his banjo to New York City and become the next Mumford and Avett or whatever.
Right.
So, and it was kind of a nod to our friends Holy Ghost Tent Revival from North Carolina.
Oh yeah, they've been on the show. I didn't know y'all knew each other.
Yeah, we've played a bunch of shows with them over the years. So it was kind of an amalgam of our friend, Bobby and the Holy Ghost, and just sort of a nod to like our Carolinian friend. It's just a fun word to say.
Kakalaki off of Dead'll Get 'Em by the Defibulators.
Hey, this is Bug Jennings from the Defibulators. You want to check out our new album, Dead'll Get 'Em? You can pick up a copy at your local independent record store, perhaps. If you can't find it there, then go to our website, thedefibulators.com, and order a copy on CD or vinyl.
Country Fried Rock is proud to announce our second compilation to raise funds and awareness for musicians' mental health services. You can help keep music alive. Check it out at countryfriedrock.bandcamp.com. All of the proceeds raised go directly to the model program for community-based mental health services, reaching the musician community of Athens, Georgia. Born of tragedy, but making a difference for people right now. Prevent musician suicide. You know an organization makes a difference when people like this step up to the plate and donate songs. We thank them, and we thank you for your generous contributions to preventing musician suicide. Keep music alive.
Hey, this is Bug Jennings of the Defibulators. You want to check us out online, go to thedefibulators.com. Defibulators with a U. That is TheDefibulators.com.
Language is always fascinating, and especially when you're talking with someone who uses language and words for their living.
A hilarious word.
Y'all have a lot of things that are fun to say. I mean, just the name of the band alone. Why Defibulators, not Defibrillators?
Well, it's like nuclear versus nuclear. Erin, my co-singer, she makes fun of me because I always say TV. Defibrillator is just kind of like we thought of the hillbilly spelling and hillbilly pronunciation. It's a hard word. Defibrillator is a hard enough word to say. So we figured we'd just bypass that and just make it the slang spelling, you know. It's just easier to say that way, defibrillator.
Speaking of fun to say, though, off the air we even said your album title is fun to say, Dead'll Get 'em.
Dead'll get 'em. Dead'll get 'em. Go and get 'em. Dead'll get 'em.
You can just see the other two guys nodding their head. Well,
it's going to get 'em. Dead'll get 'em. Well, there he goes in his new Cadillac. And he took out a loan for that. Well, dead'll get 'em. It's a line from the first song on the record, Holy Roller, and we had a couple other ideas for the album title, but that, because it's fun to say, it's difficult to spell. We've seen all sorts of different misspellings of it. Well, it's two apostrophes, so despite the challenges in spelling it on paper and in print, we just thought it was so fun to say when we stuck with it. And it's kind of it's kind of a through line of the record in one way or another.
What was different for you all from the first record to this one?
Well, the first record, we've been playing for a couple of years before we started recording that record. We were changing as a band as we started, just trying to figure out what we were, what our sound was. Initially, it was just digging up all these different styles of classic country, from bluegrass to rockabilly to Dixieland to jug band. And we kind of went through that phases of our lineup that reflect those styles. We didn't have a drummer for a while. We had two washboard players, a trombone player, and an accordion player. We were like 9-piece. And then early on, we were just a 4-piece rockabilly band. So the first album was just kind of like trying to just capture all those styles that we were really excited about when we started the band, So I think stylistically it was a little bit more spread out. It had a kind of a wider breadth influences. And we were basically just throwing stuff at the wall. Do this one kind of Dixieland, let's do this one more straight up bluegrass. We didn't have a drummer on a couple tracks on that record. So yeah, it was just like a big experiment for us, big sonic experiment. And for this record, it's been a while since the first record, so we've had more time to think about it, and the songs have been written for a while. Started recording it early on, and then we took a break from it because we got busy touring and stuff, and we really finished it up, put the pedal to the metal this last year. And really kind of tried to hone in on what it was that, for me, like what it was that we like about country music, that we want people to listen to and to give a second look at. For me, it's walking bass lines and the shuffle rhythm, traditional honky-tonk rhythms that you don't really hear in pop music or in indie rock music for sure. You hear Derailers and Dale Watson do it all day long, which is awesome, and those are two big influences on us. But we kind of wanted to take, the kind of the honky-tonk shuffle and do something different with it, and reintroduce that beat to people that normally maybe had not heard it before, rock fans or indie fans or whatever. And the fiddle, too, we want to stick with the fiddle. The fiddle is hugely important in what we do. I can't ever foresee a time when we wouldn't really have a fiddle in the band. It's a more succinct, streamlined snapshot of what we're doing right now and what we're trying to get across with what we think country music is, or what our idea of country music. Harmonies, of course, are a big part of that too, and are throughout it. We've added a drummer since Corn Money, full-time drummer. So now we've got a great tight rhythm section, and just kind of wanted to have something with a little more impact.
And so in terms of recording, you said you started, then you were on the road a bit, and then you finished it up. What was the methodology of that? Yeah, I mean, we do everything on our own. We're an independent band, and we work with the people that are friends and our contacts. And so initially, we did one track. We did Pay for That Money with our friend John Hill, who worked on the last album. But he got too busy, couldn't really finish up the album or work on it. So we went up to Woodstock. We did half the tracks at the Isicon in Woodstock. Dan Goodwin, D. James Goodwin, who he mixed Corn Money. And he's also worked on some great albums, including some friends of ours from Brooklyn called Yellowbirds. They're so good.
He's a great mixer and great engineer. And he's got a little cabin-style recording studio up on the mountain in Woodstock. We did a couple of different sessions there. We'd go there for a few days at a time, stay there, record, track, and then come back to the city. And that's always been important for us. Which is how we recorded Corn Money, is getting out of the city. We recorded up in Rhinebeck. So we try to get out of the city and, step away from it and kind of focus on the music in the mountains or, in the woods or whatever, not in the city. So we did half the album then, and then we took another break. It was kind of a piecemeal thing, and then it got too difficult for us to keep going up to Woodstock to finish the record. So we found Brian Bender, who we have mutual friends with. He mixed Langhorne Slim's last record.
Oh, yeah.
And we've got a lot of mutual friends. Our drummer and bass player worked with him on many different things, Crystal Warren. And he's got a studio deep in Sunset Park in Brooklyn. Very industrial, kind of desolate area, which is, not what we wanted to record the album, but we finished it up there. We finished tracking there. We recorded 2 whole new songs there. And he's a sonic genius. He's just a technical genius in the sounds that we were getting, and we were really excited about. So we finished up there. So it has this kind of hybrid, it was half of it was recorded up in the woods, and the rest was recorded industrial Brooklyn. So I think it kind of has those two sides of the record.
We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but you all are on the road quite a bit more now. Yeah.
We try to stay on for, about 3 weeks at a time. We'll do like 3-week run and then come home for a week or two, then go out for another 3 weeks. So, we're home for a couple days this week, and then we go back out, and we're doing a couple dates. Yeah, so when you're based in New York, a lot of us still have ties in the city that we can't get away from for more than a few weeks at a time. So it's kind of easier for us to hang out there during the week, work, do whatever we need to do. Then on the weekend, we'll go out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and kind of hub out of New York City. We're trying to get on the road as much as we can. We have a Michigan tour planned for February. Michigan in February.
Yeah. Michigan has great music audiences, though.
I know. No, I'm not complaining at all. I'm worried we're going to get stuck in the snow somewhere. I love Michigan very much, and we've had some great shows there. And we're getting to go to some places like we've never been before, like Kalamazoo.
Which is fun to say.
Also fun to say. And they've got a great brewery there.
From Dead'll Get 'em. That's the Defibulators Rumble Strip. Did you know you can download each podcast for free? Just scroll down to the bottom of the page on countryfriedrock.org.
Hey, this is Bug Jennings from the Defibulators. If you want to see what we're up to on the road, you can check us out on Twitter at the Defibulators or on our website, thedefibulators.com, and go to our Vine page. You can see all the weird things that we find in truck stops all across the country.
What kind of places work for you all well that might be surprising, or maybe were at first?
I think we're constantly surprised by the places we'll play sometimes. We can play roadhouses, bars, noisy bars, honky-tonks, and then we'll play listening rooms and art centers. It's kind of a trick to change your mentality when you're playing a bar versus a place where everybody's sitting down and is waiting to be entertained without giving you back any hooping and hollering, just polite clapping and stuff. So some art centers and stuff like that, which was always funny. We played Detroit Institute of Arts recently, which was amazing. It was this huge room with Rivera murals all over.
Wow.
Murals he painted in, the 30s. Murals of the Ford plant, and some auto assembly line workers, in a room with the most amazing reverb you've ever heard. So places like that, we're like, wow, we're a greasy country band, and we're playing in this high art joint. Don't scratch the walls. Yeah, stuff like that. We've played a prison in Belgium.
Wow.
It was awesomely creepy.
Like a functioning prison or a former prison?
Oh, yeah. Functioning, operational.
Okay, so that's your Johnny Cash moment, I guess.
Yeah, Johnny Cash in Belgium. Belgium has a great roots rockabilly country scene and fan base. And we toured over there for 2.5 weeks, and it was some of the most fun shows we've ever had in our life. We'll never forget them, and we'll never forget a lot of the people that we met there. But our promoter, he booked a prison for us to play, and he's like, all right, today you're going to play a prison. Yeah, do not take pictures. Do not engage in conversation. Be prepared to be yelled at and screamed. There will be murders. There will be bikers. It was so bizarre. And we go over this. He actually took us over a moat to get to the prison. It was in a castle-like prison. It was the most beautiful prison I'd ever seen. Napoleon had stayed there at one point. It was in a town called Hoogstraten, and there was a minimum security, about 200 prisoners in this giant castle. It was pretty funny. We had the prison food, and then we set up in this small shotgun shack of a room, and there were those wooden chairs and bright, green cement, and very, very fluorescent sort of environment. And they were hooping and hollering during the set, and they were having a good time. We were having a good time. And I noticed every time our bass player would take a solo, they would really get into it and just really start cheering and whooping and whistling and screaming. And it happened a couple times, and because we take a lot of bass solos. And we did that. We don't always take bass solos, very rare. So that occurred to us, like, wow, why do they like bass solos so much over here? What is it about the bass solo that riles up Belgian prisoners so much? And we realized later, Erin was standing in front of Freddie, our bass player, so anytime he took a bass solo, she would turn around 90 or 180 degrees to face him, revealing her posterior end to the front of the stage.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And we didn't realize this till later.
You just thought they really dug that slap bass.
Yeah, man, they love bass solos in Belgium. No, it wasn't the bass solo so much. It was the low end. Aaron didn't realize it, even after we realized it. One of the most memorable gigs we've ever done. In the spring and February, we're doing some dates with the Whiskey Gentry they mentioned on the show. I can't wait to go on the road with those guys and drink whiskey. Lauren is, I don't know if she mentioned on the show, big fan of Fireball whiskey.
No, she did not mention
the cinnamon-flavored whiskey. And Aaron Brew is a big whiskey drinker, too, fond of the cinnamon whiskey. I'm thinking maybe we can get a cinnamon whiskey endorsement. Well, it will be a fun whiskey-fueled tour. I love what they're doing with country, and listening to that album gets me so riled up, It makes me drive. We were listening to it in the car yesterday. It makes me want to drive faster without realizing it. That's kind of like listening to Motorhead-style country sometimes. They have a little bit of Motorhead going on.
I noticed on your site you have a gorgeous-looking silver vinyl.
Yeah, we did our first vinyl. We didn't do it for the first record, so we wanted to make sure we got it out for this one. Yeah, we're really happy with it. It's our first full-length 12-inch LP, and we printed it on silver vinyl. It's really exciting to do that. We also have a little 7-inch of Kakalaki that we handmade the cover for out of amplifier material cover, sort of made out of tweed Tolex with hand-stamped lettering. That was fun, The DIY thing is fun as a band, although the only drawback is that you have to DIY.
So I heard y'all have some kind of book or something. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, well, we got it's over 100 pages of Defibulators, sheet music, tablature, pictures, and other random stuff by Mel Bay Publications. So we got our first, I assume will be our only Mel Bay book, but I grew up playing learning guitar from Mel Bay instructional books, and now the Defibulators have their own Mel Bay book, which is kind of a trip. And somebody said they saw it for sale at Ernest Tubb Records in Nashville, so I thought, okay, that's a decent achievement. I could be happy with that, and we're really proud of it. Colin Bay, who's running a lot of the new stuff going on at Mel Bay, saw us play in St. Louis one year, and he stayed in touch, and we got this book done, and it was really fun to transcribe all the solos and all the lyrics and everything. I don't know who is going to purchase it. I don't know how many of our fans are great sight readers, but if there's classical players that want to learn fiddle, or there's awesome telly stuff for people that want to play like Roadblock or learn some of his licks. There's some really cool tablature pages, and you can learn all his signature licks.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. We were super psyched to have that published. We're very proud of it. Yeah, Mel Bay is doing a lot of cool things these days, really trying to, bring the company into the eyes of younger viewers.
Yeah.
It's hard with the internet. People just go on YouTube now and just, learn how to play something. So
right.
They're really expanding and trying to re-engage people. And so we're proud to be part of their catalog now.
That's very cool. Well, Bug Jennings of the Defibulators, I appreciate you being with us here on Country Fried Rock. Thank you.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Safe travels to y'all.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Country Fried Rock, music uncovered. Find our full playlist at countryfriedrock.org. You can subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes. Just search Country Fried Rock. Our theme music is from The Heap. Check them out at heapdeluxe.com. That's HEAPDELUXE. Our Country Fried Rock stinger is from Steve Soto and the Twisted Hearts. Country Fried Rock. Copyright 2013 by Lilypad Productions. All rights reserved. Country Fried Rock is a partnership with the nonprofit Florence Regional Arts Alliance. Your donations to this program are tax deductible to the extent you are eligible under U.S. law. Country Fried Rock radio programs are distributed to public radio through the Public Radio Exchange, prx.org.
Ever he been helping us some country fried rock.